Hey everybody, my name is Kris Johnson and welcome to Motivational Mondays. Today we're discussing the importance of taking a job or gig and using it as a stepping stone to move forward in your career. Let's go ahead and get into it. One of the topics I discuss a lot with my students is the importance of having a strategic plan for your career. Now, keep in mind, sometimes we make a plan a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, whatever it might be. We make these plans with the best of intentions and things change all the time. And that's fine. I think it's important to have goals written down. It's important to be aware of the things you want to accomplish, but it's also really important to be flexible within that plan. But one of the things that's really useful is to think about the job that you have right now. Think about the gig that you have right now and what you can do to use that as a stepping stone to whatever the next thing is going to be. To be forward thinking. How do I take this one opportunity and craft this into some sort of other future opportunity? Now, the reality is there's going to be certain gigs that we do that aren't going to lead us anywhere, that they're just like a one-time gig and it's whatever, it's on our resume, or maybe it's just the money's in our bank account and we're not thinking about it. But oftentimes, a lot of the things that we're doing, if we document it right and if we're strategic, can really help propel our careers forward. So I want to give you an example of how that's shown up in my own life. I've always been really passionate about ensemble playing, about being a part of a band, being a part of a team in a section, and just really trying to nail my part and blend and be a part of the larger sound of the band. It's something I'm really passionate about, especially as I became more and more serious about arranging music. When I was in college, that was kind of something that I was known for, was being able to read my part, to be able to nail it, kind of lead the section or bring the section in and really focus on having like one unified sound. That ability actually helped me as I was moving through grad school and starting to direct some ensembles as a graduate assistant, and then eventually moving on and graduating from college and joining the Count Basie Orchestra. The story that I love to tell is I remember Derek Gardner was working with me. I was just coming out of Michigan State, and the Gerald Wilson Orchestra was coming to the Detroit Jazz Festival. Rodney Whitaker was contracting the group, and I ended up getting contracted to play second trumpet underneath Mike Williams. Mike Williams, lead trumpet player for the Count Basie Orchestra for very many years, fantastic trumpet player, and happens to live in Michigan, kind of like in a different area of Michigan that I'm in now, but I had this opportunity to suddenly play second trumpet underneath Mike Williams of the Count Basie Orchestra. Derek Gardner, who was my trumpet professor and who was in the Count Basie Orchestra, he told me, he's like, now listen, it's very important when you play this gig, I want you to really get under Mike and just like make him work, really support him playing second trumpet. You never know, you might have the opportunity one day to play in the Count Basie Orchestra. Now, in my mind, I was like, yeah, right, that's never going to happen. But little did I know that was really going to be the opportunity that helped to seal the deal for me to be able to take that next gig. So playing in the group, working under Mike, and I did exactly what Derek said. I was just leaning into these parts. We're playing these really challenging parts underneath Patty Austin. And yeah, we're just working through. And Mike was impressed with my playing. We had a great musical experience. Everything's working out. And I remember at the end, I was like, all right, I'm going to shoot my shot. I'm going to talk to Mike and say, listen, if there's ever an opportunity in the Basie Orchestra, I'd love to be able to, get in there and play. And he cut me off and he's like, oh man, it's never going to happen. That's not really something that they do. They're going to end up getting somebody out of New York. You're never going to have that opportunity, sorry, but it's not going to work out. So, I went back home with my tail between my legs and thought, all right, I guess that's just not in the cards for me, focus on my education work and the gigs I was doing. A couple months later, I get a call from Derek, and Derek's like, yo, Kris, hey man, you're about to get a call from the Count Basie Orchestra, and it's going to be, time for you to go on the road. They were trying to get me to do it, but I'm too busy, and I recommended you. I said, there's no one else except for you that can do this gig, and they're going to give you a call. And I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever, Derek. But next thing I know, I'm getting a call from the manager, DSQ, from the Count Basie Orchestra, and she's like, Kris, Derek recommended you. We want you to, come out on tour. It's a 6-week tour. Starts giving me the information. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, great. When's the audition? How does this work? So I start asking these questions. She said, well, Derek Gardner recommended you. So that was your audition. So in my mind, I'm thinking like, all right, well, I'm about to play with the Count Basie Orchestra. She said, I tell you what, let's see how the 6-week tour does. If it goes well for you, then you're in the band. And that was the end of the discussion. When I showed up for the first gig, I just made sure that I was ready. I've been practicing my sight reading. I didn't get any of the music in advance, but I was listening to a ton of the recordings, but I was prepared and I was ready. Now, already that's taking something that I prepared in college, my ability to be ready for any gig, to be able to read really well, to be able to blend with the section. I'm already taking that and applying it at the jazz festival. I took the opportunity to make sure that Mike Williams knew who I was, so if my name ever came up, that I might be able to get that recommendation. And then after that, when I got the gig, I just leaned into it and worked really, really hard to make sure that I was being a good steward of this opportunity that I had. From there, though, I wasn't done with that being a launching pad. I wasn't done with that being a major stepping stone. So that's great that I'm playing with the Basie Orchestra. It's great that I'm a soloist with the Basie Orchestra. I want to write for the group too. So I started submitting some arrangements. At the time, I was going over to like a FedEx, Kinko's or whatever, and printing off PDF charts and taping them and bringing them in. I remember the first chart that I brought in was a contrafact of In a Mellow Tone, the Harry Sweets Edison, Ben Webster song, Did You Call Her Today? And I had harmonized like a brass soli and sax soli and all this stuff and had all these things in it, but I didn't take into account that there's already such a famous arrangement of In a Mellow Tone by Frank Foster that the band plays, so it wasn't really going to happen. That wasn't going to be the song. But to me, I had it in my mind that I was going to write for the Count Basie Orchestra. Nothing was going to stop me from meeting this goal. This was going to be the stepping stone into establishing myself as an arranger. This was going to be the stepping stone into me learning more about the process and more about the history. So I kept submitting charts, and I remember the first chart I believe that I ever had played was actually by Everett Green. Everett Green was coming in as a guest soloist with the group and needed a chart on Just Friends. So I wrote a chart, and it successfully made it in the book. Whenever he was on the road with us, we ended up playing that. Fast forward, we're in Europe in 2008, and we were in Italy. We had just started rehearsing a chart that I did based on Marcus Belgrave's composition, All My Love. Shout out to the late, great Marcus Belgrave from Detroit. My mentor, brilliant musician. Make sure you check him out if you haven't already. Marcus's chart, All My Love, is just a beautiful song, and I decided, all right, I want to make sure that I have this ready to go for the Basie Orchestra. I'd already done an arrangement of it for a youth group, and kind of just made some tweaks and brought it in for the Basie Orchestra. The director at the time, the late Bill Hughes, loved the chart. He's like, Kris, we need to do this one. This one's really good. Let's keep rehearsing this. So I'm thinking like, man, any day now I might get to perform this live. So we're in Rome. It's my first time in Europe, first time in Italy, and we're in Rome. And we get to the sound check, and I look at the set list, and on the set list, it says, All My Love. It's right there. And I'm just looking at it like, yo, I'm in Rome for the first time. We're playing for this like sold out audience, and it's happening. This dream that I had since I joined the group is about to come true, and they're about to play one of my charts. And it was a really dope experience. I mean, we ended up playing that chart on the road for many years. There's a live recording of it on my YouTube channel that I'll link. From a performance at New Trier High School. But yeah, it happened. And again, it was wonderful, but I was ready, like, what's next? So from there, that becomes the stepping stone, and it moves to the next area of my career where I'm like, great, now I can say, and it's totally genuine and it's totally correct, that I'm an arranger for the Count Basie Orchestra. Every opportunity that I got, I was trying to still submit more charts, but I was also making sure that as I'm selling my charts to other groups, as I'm, networking, I'm able to say, I'm an arranger for the Count Basie Orchestra, and it led to more commissions, it led to more opportunities, and it just started moving forward from there. Later on, I ended up teaching at the Ohio State University. I'm teaching the arranging class, and I got to share with my students what it was like to write for the Basie Orchestra and the different things that I learned about writing in that style, and it was really just like this great experience, but it just kept moving forward. Fast forward years later, the director of the Basie Orchestra, Scotty Barnhart, reached out to me and said, hey, we're doing a Christmas record, and I want you to submit 2 tunes for the Christmas record. I want you to arrange Sleigh Ride, and I want you to arrange Let It Snow. I arranged both tunes, and I just went in, worked really hard on them, had all these ideas in my mind. Let It Snow was savable. Sleigh Ride was not. Sleigh Ride was just way too modern for the group and for what the group was going for. It didn't fit the style of the Basie Orchestra. However, I remember we were in the studio with Greg Field, and we were working on Let It Snow. Ellis Marsalis was a guest artist. And so we're working on Let It Snow. And he's like, man, Kris, the rhythm section wouldn't play these hits this way in the Basie Orchestra, or there needs to be a piano chorus out front. And it was starting to feel like it was, like the chart just wasn't going to work out. And so my thought was, okay, again, you have this opportunity. The music is in front of the musicians. You're in the studio. You didn't quite write in the style exactly the way that you should. One, I'm going to learn this lesson and I'm always going to write exactly in the style of Basie and kind of just make sure that I understand the group I'm writing for. But two, I'm going to make sure that I seize this opportunity and make the changes. I said, hey, we have a break coming up. Let's go over the score. We go over the score together. I start marking all the changes that he wants. I collect everybody's parts, and we're at Capitol Records in LA, and I just lay out all the charts on the table, and I'm just marking up every chart, making every change. Every change that was recommended, I go through, really just cutting out some figures, having the rhythm section swing through some chord changes, mark them all up. A couple people say, Kris, I think it's too late. I don't know if it's going to work out. And I'm like, no, forget that. This is my stepping stone. This is important. I get to get a chart recorded by the Basie Orchestra. Let's go. So I start going through and I'm charting everything. And all of a sudden we get back in the studio, we read it down. Everything worked. Suddenly it all locked in. And I'm so proud of that track. I'm so proud of that recording, and I'm also so proud that I got to record, have a chart of mine recorded by the late great Ellis Marsalis. And I learned an important lesson. One, be flexible and be open to changes. Make sure that you are really deliberate and tenacious about the way that your music is played, and also about being available to make whatever changes are necessary. Be a problem solver and write in the style of the ensemble that you're writing for. Sleigh Ride didn't make it. Later on, I recorded it with my big band. You'll see a link down below for that. But I was really proud of the project, really proud of how that turned out. So speaking of stepping stones, moving forward, one of the lessons that I learned that was very important was to write in the style of the group that you're writing for. So fast forward a couple years later, I'm arranging for the Grammy-nominated album All About That Basie by the Cal Basie Orchestra. Scotty called me, asked me to arrange Can't Hide Love by Earth, Wind & Fire, but to put it in the style of Basie. Man, it was straight down the middle. It made so much sense. Really proud of that recording, really proud of that track. But then we get on the road. We're about to go on tour right before we go into the recording session. And Scotty hits me up. He's like, hey, you know that tune, Hello by Adele? That was like a huge hit at the time. He's like, yeah, I could hear that in the style of like Little Darling. Can you write that? And so like the night before we go on tour, I'm just like writing that again, straight down the middle, right in the style. Knock that out. We get on the road, and I get a text from Scotty. He's like, hey, Kris, hey, man, you know that Leonard Cohen tune, Hallelujah? Man, we should record that. Greg mentioned that to me. Let's go ahead and get that in the record, too. So I remember we were playing at Yoshi's in Oakland, and I'm sitting down at the piano, like, before sound check, after sound check, and I've got some paper out, I've got my laptop, and I'm just arranging and coming up with the harmony and writing the whole arrangement while we're on the road. So, like, a couple days before we get into the session. But again, it's about seizing that opportunity and being ready for whatever the next thing is. It wasn't enough that I was just on the road and playing these gigs. It wasn't enough that I was about to go into the studio and record one track. It's like, hey, if I have the opportunity to have multiple songs that I arranged, recorded by the Basie Orchestra, I'm going to go for it. Might lose a little bit of sleep, but that becomes the stepping stone to the next thing. All of a sudden, all these opportunities start adding up. And as I look forward, I realize I've positioned myself in a place where I'm a problem solver. I know how to write in the style. I know how to be studious. I know how to make changes and accept feedback. And now those are some of the things that I'm known for as a musician. And I learned a lot from these situations that might have been challenging or might have been stressful. So what's important is you want to think about what is the next opportunity that's going to come up? How do I prepare for that? And how do I deliver with whatever I've been given now to make sure that I am a good steward of whatever is going to come next? So that's a really, really important lesson. The last little bonus piece of advice that I want to add for today's Motivational Monday is I want you to really think about when it is time to leave an opportunity, always make sure that you try to pay it forward to someone and give them an opportunity that they might not be able to have. When I was teaching at Ohio State University and I left to go teach at University of Utah, I made sure that I put in a recommendation for one of my former students, Anthony Stanko. I said, look, he's a great musician. He would do a great job teaching these students. He could use the work right out. This would be wonderful. And I've watched his career soar, just a brilliant musician and educator. When I left the Detroit area and I was teaching at Civic Jazz Orchestra, I made sure that I'm recommending someone to come in and step in and teach that group. Anytime that you're walking away from an opportunity and it's time to move on, don't burn that bridge. Keep the relationship intact, and also think about how can me leaving benefit this organization and benefit another musician by passing that on and making a recommendation. One of the tricks is if you get a call for something that you can't do, or if you get a call for something and you have to back out of a gig, be solution oriented. One of the ways to do that is somebody texts me for a gig. I'm like, man, I know that I can't do this gig, but it's a pretty good gig. Somebody should take it. I'll check in with a couple of other trumpet players and say, hey, it might have an opportunity for you on such and such date. Are you available? Once somebody's locked in a reasonable amount of time, then I'll reach out to the person, to the band leader or whoever, and say, hey, I can't do this, but I've already got such and such in line. Do you need a trumpet player? Here's their information. And what happens is now it becomes the circle of life, and good people are getting good jobs, and that karma comes back to you. And it's just really just being, a responsible citizen of your musical community, and a great way to kind of pay it forward to the next generation of people that might need some opportunities in the same way that I needed that opportunity to join the Basie Orchestra, or needed the opportunity to be able to write for the group, and then moving on to the next thing and the next thing. So anyway, that's all I have for today's Motivational Monday. Please make sure that you are not only using different parts of your career and different gigs as stepping stones, but also paying it forward to the next generation by passing on opportunities when you're in that position. Thanks so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.